everybody, and welcome to my review and gameplay demo for Rising Sun. Before I get started, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at all of my various social media pages as well as my Patreon page. On all of those, you'll be able to interact with myself as well as my channel in all sorts of really fun and interesting ways. Now, moving right into Rising Sun. You guys are probably familiar with this game. It went really insanely big on Kickstarter. The miniatures were one of the biggest draws for it, and it made millions and millions of dollars. It went absolutely insane. But that said, getting into brass tacks of the actual game itself. This is a skirmish-style combat game that involves alliances, resource management, even some blind bidding, and a whole bunch of other different stuff all mixed into one. It takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to play, and it plays up to 5 people or 6 if you get one of the expansions. The base retail game itself just plays the 5 people. But that said, without further ado, we're going to jump right into what this game is similar to. As far as similarities are concerned, there are 2 major ones that I wanted to mention. The first one is Risk. Old school, very classic Risk, where you are talking about just straight up territory control, and person A and person B go and blow up. That's really a lot of what Rising Sun boils down to, is you end up having combat that involves territory control, and in this case you're obtaining little panels that indicate victory points. So Rising Sun has a lot more mechanics associated with it, but it has that same kind of feel, and especially when it comes to the alliances of I'll leave you alone if you leave me alone type of thing. You see that quite a bit in Rising Sun. The second one that I wanted to mention is Blood Rage. Blood Rage is from the exact same designer, Eric M. Lang, and it features a very similar style of gameplay. You have this sort of skirmish style gameplay, although you're talking about Norse mythology rather than Japanese history / mythology. And you do have a similar feel to the combat and general flow of the game, but again, Rising Sun has a lot more going on with it. You've got some more strategic alliance aspects to it. You have a lot more in terms of where you can get resources from and how you can get them, how you can interact with your fellow players, as well as how the combat itself flows and what actually occurs during the combat phase. So there is an awful lot going on with this game, and I really just want to jump right into it, so we're going to do that and get into my demo. Alright everybody, we're all set up and ready to start playing some Rising Sun. In this game, over the course of 3 rounds, you're trying to get the most victory points of anybody else at the table. The way that you do this is through numerous avenues, including strategic resource management, making and breaking alliances, appeasing the gods, making sure that you are a very honorable combatant, and making sure that you train up your military so that you can be the best of the best. Setup for this game is a little bit different from most because the first player does not ever change. So the easiest way to set it up is everybody picks their individual clans, and you look here at what your starting honor is. So in this case, the Khoi clan starts with honor number 1. And you essentially go from top down. So number 1 will be the first player and will remain the first player for the entire game, even though the honor can shift. In this case, I've got the Khoi clan, the Turtle clan, the Dragonfly clan, and the Bonsai clan. To start off, I'll mention how you set up the individual players. As I mentioned, everybody's going to get their individual player shield associated directly with their clan. In addition, everybody will get one of these tokens or one of these boards that indicates the political mandates I'll go over later, as well as the progression of war that happens later on as well. You'll also get all of your monster control tokens, or these little circles here that will be going underneath the monsters to show that they're yours. Everybody will also get their individual fortresses, and then we also get our character or our figurines. So there are 2 major types of figures. You have the Bushi, which don't have any base on them. You also have the Shinto, which have a white base on them, and these are able to go and worship and appease the gods. And then you also have your Dynamo. These are the ones that have a black base on them. These are your clan leaders. They count for an additional force in combat, and they are also immune to a lot of various game effects. On the actual board itself, every clan has an associated province. And what you'll do is you'll take one bushi, your dynamo, and one of your fortresses and put them on the associated section. Next, I'll just be going over the sections of the board because these are mentioned in cards and several other places. Down here where the provinces are shown, this is referred to as the map. Up here, this is where the Shintos go, and this is where they are worshiping. So these are the different gods that come out. These are all randomized. You take 4 every time, and they have all sorts of different powers that will come up during the kami phases. This section right here, this is the phase tracker. We have 3 rounds, as I mentioned before. We have spring, summer, and autumn, and essentially we do a total of 7 phases each time, and we have 3 phases, and then the kami, 2 phases in the kami, 2 phases in the kami, and then the war phase at the very end. The political mandates here, this little stack, are going to indicate which ones we're doing, and I'll get into that just a little later. Over here we've got the honor track. Again, we know where this starts, and I've got the players in the order that makes it most ideal for this, but this is going to change all throughout the game, and it has a significant effect on things because if you have a higher honor, you will break ties with anybody lower than you and you will win. Last but not least, the other thing is we need to figure out where our combat is going to be taking place. Depending on how many players you have, you won't always have combat in the war phase in every province. So what you'll do is you'll take these tiles and you'll flip them over randomly, and these numbers will indicate the order in which the combat will occur. For example, in this case, Oshu will be first, followed by Shikoku, I believe is how you pronounce that, and so on and so forth, all the way down to Edo as the last one. And the other 2 that don't have the markers, in this case Kyoto and Nagato, will not have a combat this particular round, so you may as well not have anyone there. Last but certainly not least are all of these cards. The cards are involved with the training phase, and again I'll get into that in a little bit, and effectively each phase or each round, spring, summer, and autumn, have core cards, and then they also have extra cards that you need to use. So these are the examples of some of the extra cards, and you'll see that in this case they have a Shinto symbol on them. That's just how I personally organize them. But we also have symbols that have a horse on them, and then we also have what looks to me like a lucky cat. I'm honestly not exactly certain what it is. But then you can see for these other ones, see I've got autumn. These are the core cards for autumn, and then these are the combat tiles that we'll be using, and again they have the same provinces listed on them. So amongst the cards we have the virtues, which are things that will help you out. Like if you die, then you get victory points, or it'll allow you to get more soldiers, all sorts of different things. You've got enhancements, which will make your combatant stronger, or it will allow you to summon things when you otherwise wouldn't be able to. And then you also have war upgrades. These are typically at the start of war. You're able to do some specific sort of thing of some sort. Last but not least, we have the monsters. The monsters are what made the Kickstarter relatively famous, or in part what made them relatively famous, and that's what I've got all of these bags over here for. You can see I've got spring right here. These are my spring monsters, and essentially all this indicates is these are the things that are available for us to purchase. The monsters will come out and fight with us, or we can get enhancements, virtues, and war upgrades that will help us as a player and our characters that are already on the board. Moving into the general flow of this game, it's actually fairly simple. At the beginning of each round, spring, summer, and autumn, we have the tea ceremony. This is where we determine alliances using these symbols. All you need to do is you need to say, well, I want to ally with you, so we connect these to indicate that we are allied with one another. This is where strategic partnerships come very much in play. And it's a lot of risk style things where I'll leave you alone if you leave me alone. You can also exchange resources, coins, all sorts of different things. Pretty much anything is available. In addition, each of the clans has a special ability, and sometimes you're able to trade you using your special ability in order to help out your allies or whatever it happens to be. You can use pretty much any and all criteria that you want in order to establish the alliances. And one important thing is when we get to the next phase of political mandates, then every single mandate except for one has a special bonus for the people who are allied. So it's always advantageous to have an ally if at all possible. After we do the tea ceremony, we go into the political mandate phase. That's when we're playing these 7 mandates, and during that time we will play 3 and then undergo the kami phase, and then we'll, after we do that, we'll do 2 kami, and then we do the war phase at the very end, and that's where we resolve the battles again in the order in which they appear. After that, we do the season reset, we get new cards, we get rid of mercenaries and money, and then the play will move to the next player. That's pretty much it. That is the general flow of the game. It's relatively simple, and I'll just go through some of the key aspects very quickly here. First off, talking about the political mandates. The political mandates are played starting with the person with the highest honor in spring. During summer, the starting player will be the person to the next to them. In other words, with the second highest starting honor. It doesn't matter how your honor moves up and down during the game, you will still be the first person to play during the summer. The way play works is you will pick 4, you will choose one to play, you'll put it face up for everybody to see, and then the person next to you will perform the action, it'll go around, and then whoever picked the action is the last one to perform it. After that, pass them over, the next person takes another one, so you're always picking from 4. They will select what they want to do and go and go and go. And that's pretty much the size of it, and you just go until you get to the kami phases and then the war phase. And during this time, we will be putting more troops out on the board, moving them around, getting cards, doing all of this kind of stuff. So going over the political mandates, I'm just going to be going from left to right on this board here, starting off with the recruit phase. The recruit phase is the most basic way for you to get new people onto the board. From your supply, you are able to take one, either Bushi or Shinto, or a monster, if you've got monsters available, and put them wherever you have a stronghold. That's all there is to it. The way that the Shintos work is rather unique though. Wherever you have a stronghold, you can put the Shinto down and then they can be sent to worship. If you send them to worship, you will put them onto one of the god indicators here, the kami indicators, and they are worshiping at that kami. Once we get to the kami phase, then these will resolve in order, and I'll talk about that after the political mandates. But that's pretty much it for recruit. The other thing is that the bonus that you and your ally get is that you get 1 additional figure. So if I had 2 strongholds, I'd be able to summon a total of 3 new characters. After that, we've got Marshal. Marshal is a very important one, primarily for the ally ability that it gives. That said, it is also important because this is how you move your militaries. So most of the time, militaries can move across land borders and across the sea connections that we see around here. So for example, over here, the Turtle Clan in Kyoto, they can move right here to, what is that, Kansai. They can move to Edo, they can move to Osha, however they want to do it. And that would be their 1 move. Each individual figure gets 1 movement speed, so to speak, so they can move across 1 border or across 1 sea connection. The exception to this is the Dragonfly Clan. Their ability is they can fly and go wherever they want with 1 move. The important thing, like I mentioned, is for you and your ally, this is how you build new strongholds. If you want to build a stronghold, you pay 3 money, and then you get a stronghold anywhere on the map. You don't have to have a presence there already. One thing I did forget to mention also at the beginning is you need to get your seasonal income, which is the money that you start with at the beginning of each season, and then you spend it throughout in various ways. Speaking of spending money, the next one up is training. Training is how you get the cards off the board over here. And very importantly, this is also the only one where the person who picks it gets to go first. And you and your ally get to get a reduced cost of whatever it happens to be. So for example, if I wanted to buy this Earth Dragon, it would only cost me 2 coins instead of 3. And that would be kind of cool. And the way that the monsters work, if you want to get a monster, is you would say, I'm purchasing this, you would put the card in front of you, you would go and you'd find whatever the miniature is for it, and then you would put one of your, you would put one of your monster control discs underneath it, just like this, and then you would immediately summon it to somewhere that you have a stronghold, and that's it. And then the next person will go, next person, next person. And again, this is where you can get your virtues, your enhancements, and your war upgrades of all different sorts. And then next up we have the harvest. This is the main way that early on at least you can get some pretty decent points, as well as getting some other resources as well. This is the harvest token, this is what it looks like. And essentially every single player gets a coin, and then the person who picked it, as well as their ally, gets a bonus associated to the provinces where they have the most force. Force is really simple to calculate. Each bushi is just one force, and then the dynamo is 2 forces. In the case of the Turtle Clan, their fortresses count as 1 force as well. Whoever has the most force wins, quote unquote, and if you and your ally have the most force in multiple areas, that means that you get whatever the bonus is in these little hexagons. And you can see these 3, the Kyoto, Kansai, and Edo, they have a substantial number of victory points, these little rising sun symbols, when you do the harvest. So it's a good way to get points initially, and there's also a good way to get coins initially as well by using harvest. So after that, the last but not least one is the betray. Betray is unique in that only the person who picks it gets to actually utilize it. And what this does is, if you are in an alliance, it forces a breakage of that alliance. So you're no longer allied, so you don't get the particular bonus for it. You also will lose honor, so you would lose 1 honor. You would flip your little guy down 1. And then you get to swap out 2 characters on the board for 2 of the same type. I mentioned earlier that the Dynamo is immune to this type of thing. So what I could do if I was playing the Koi is I could take one of the Turtle Bushi and one of the Bonsai Bushi, and then I would replace them with my own in the same locations, just like that. And that's how the betrayal works. It's very important to note that you have to replace a Bushi with a Bushi, a monster with a monster, or a Shinto with a Shinto. If you have Shinto up here worshiping the gods, they cannot be replaced during the round. They only get replaced at the end of the round after the war phase is finished. But that's it for the political mandates, and like I said, it's very, very simple. The one person starts, has 4 to pick from, chooses 1. Next person gets a 4th, picks 1, and it just goes around and around and around until everybody's done. During these kami phases, the way they work is, let's say that you've got something along these lines. So we've got some Shinto out here worshiping the various gods, and you resolve them in order from left to right here. So first we would resolve this one. Each of blue and red have a single Shinto on this particular one, but red has higher honor, so they would get the bonus. In this case, they would get 1 victory point for every fortress they have. The Turtle Clan, the green, is the only one on this one, so they would get 2 Ronin. So the Ronin are the mercenaries that I'll talk about when we get to the war phase in just a little bit. And then over here, we've got this person worshiping Raijin, and they get to do a summon. They get to put out a new character anywhere on the map that they want to. So it's pretty powerful. And again, there's a lot of different there's a lot of different kami that you can worship, and they will stay there all the way through up until the war phase. Now, moving into the war phase, this is where we are going to be resolving these battles. And again, we do it in order. So we start with battle number 1, which would be right here in Oshu, and then we go down and down and down. The important thing is this is where everybody needs to reveal 2 things. You need to reveal how much money you have and how many Ronin you have. Everybody will take their individual player marker here, or these player boards, and flip it over to the war side. The way that war is resolved is we first go through these advantages, these 3 advantages, and then we do the battle outcome, which is very simply seeing who has the most force, and then we do Imperial Poets to see who gets points for the people who died. The way that this works is a blind bidding. So everybody will take their shield, They would put it down. They wouldn't do it on the board. I'm just doing this as a demo. They would put it in front here. Everybody would have however much money they've got. So we'll give the Turtle Clan some, and then we'll give me some. And we would say, I've got 6 money and 3 Ronin, or whatever it is. And then what you do is you put however many coins you want to essentially bid on these individual advantages. So whichever ones would benefit you the most. And this is where a huge amount of strategy comes into place for a couple of reasons. So let's say, for example, that this is my situation. Let's say that I'm over here, and the koi, we have our Earth Dragon, which counts as 3 force, and then at the start of battle I can move 1 figure from each other player out of this province. Now, my interpretation is the Dynamo is immune to that because it says it's immune from, quote, other game effects. So that's how we're going to play it. But essentially that means I've got 3 force for the dragon and 1 force for my Bushi for a total of 4 against their 2. That's not really ideal, but they can still potentially win depending on what advantages they give. The individual advantages, first off, seppuku. Seppuku is ritual suicide in Japan, and it just means that all of your guys will kill themselves, or they may kill themselves, you don't have to. And essentially you get points for each one that died, and you move up 1 honor for each one that died as well. Next up, the next piece that resolves is taking a hostage. If you win that wager, then you're able to take any figure from your opponent off the board and put it in front of your own board. If you do that, then they lose a victory point and you gain a victory point, so you steal a victory point from them. Next up is hiring the Ronin. Just because you have Ronin tokens doesn't mean that they're automatically added. What you need to do is you need to bid on being able to hire the Ronin, and if you win that bid, then you're able to add your Ronin tokens 1 force per Ronin token, and then those stay with you until the end of the war phase. After that, everybody adds together their total force, and you see who wins the actual combat. Last but not least, we go to Imperial Poets, where whoever wins that particular wager will get 1 victory point for everybody that died, regardless of how they died, whether it was seppuku or in the actual combat. So for example, let's say that we're doing this combat and we have the koi versus the turtle. Now note that the turtle are in the lead. They have a little bit more here. And so let's see what we can do. And let's say that this is the money that they have. So then we can go like this, and then we can go like this, and like this, right? At the same time, everybody reveals what they've bid, and then we resolve them in order. So nobody bid on seppuku, so that doesn't occur. After that, we look at take hostage. Koi bid 3, and the turtle also bid 3. So in this case, turtle wins because they have more honor, and they will take the Earth Dragon hostage. Oh no! And now, koi has lost a significant amount of fighting force. After that, we go to hire Ronin. The koi won the hire Ronin section, but they have no Ronin to hire. The turtle only bid 1 on it. And so now we go to the battle outcome. Again, turtle has 2 from their dynamo, and koi only has 1 from their bushi. So the bushi will die, it'll go away. And also I forgot to move around for the hostage, but I didn't move any points. So that's the battle outcome. This token will go to the turtles, saying that they won. After that, we see Imperial Poets. The turtles bid 2 for Imperial Poets, so they would get 1 point because 1 figure died in the combat. And that's it. After that, the loser will take their money and they will put it back in the bank, and then the winner will give reparations to the loser in the form of any money that they bid. So keep in mind that the way that combat is resolved is we go in the order here. So if you're involved in multiple combats, you want to make sure that you keep your money relatively close and relatively high. You want to make sure you have enough money to deal with any of the other combats that you have throughout the entire game. But that's pretty much it. That's the entirety of the war phase, and looking at it strategically, you can think of it as you can take something from somebody you know they need. So for example, if they have 6 Ronin and you've only got, you know, none or only one or something like that, you may want to bid on it just because that means they can't get it. Same thing for taking hostages if you want to protect all your big monsters and things along those lines. So that's kind of the way to strategically think about how you do the bidding during the war phase. And effectively you just go through, you resolve all of the combats in order. If there's no combat to be had and there's just one person in a province, they automatically get the token with no combat involved. If there are multiple people, then everybody goes through and does the same thing simultaneously, and it's still whoever has the overall most wins. They don't have to beat the combined total, however. But that said, that's pretty much it for how the game works. During the cleanup, all of these will be gone, so all of these will be off to the side here. After the round is over, after the spring or summer is over, then we would have all of these out just like this. And the way cleanup works is you take all of the cards, put them off to the side, any of the unpurchased cards, and then you would take the next season. In this case, the next season for me would be summer. So I would take out my summer cards along with the special summer card section that I picked. I would get the new battle standards coming out here, move the flags to indicate the order in which that they happen. I would restack all of these guys just like this, reshuffle them and make a new pile for the next person. All of the Shintos will go back home, ready to worship another day. Everybody also loses any Ronin and money that they had. They all go back to the bank, but then you get your seasonal income and anything else you're entitled to. As part of this, one thing that happens is the hostages are released, so my Earth Dragon would come back, and then the Turtle Clan would get a coin as essentially payment for releasing my hostage. But that's pretty much it as far as the reset is concerned. And again, you just do that, you go through the summer, you do the reset again, and then you go through the autumn, and then at the end of the game you see who wins. The biggest thing at the end of the game is the points are tabulated by however many you accumulate over the course of the game, and then each of these individual battle standards will be worth however much they say. So the spring are worth 1 point, the summer are worth 2 points, and then the autumn are worth 3 points each. And then on the inside of the player shields, you'll also be able to see that if you have different types, different provinces, then you get bonus points. If you have 3 to 4 different types, you get 10 bonus, 5 to 6 different, you get 20, and 7 to 8 different, you get 30 bonus points. And whoever has the most points wins. If there's a tie, whoever has the most honor breaks the tie. But that's it. I know this was a big demo, but it is a really big game. One thing I didn't mention is I do have the monster expansion pack included in here, and that's why there's so many monsters available. There is another expansion pack that I got along with the Kickstarter, which is the Kami Unleashed. And I'll just show you the pieces for it. I won't actually get fully into how to play with it. But you can see the Kami, they actually have miniatures for the Kami that represent each individual one that you're allowed to worship. And there's a card to go along with each one as well. Essentially what this particular expansion does is it takes the Kami and it puts them physically on the board, and they have some kind of special ability. For example, this one, the figures of the player with the highest honor in this province can't be killed by any other players. So your combatants are invincible. Even if you're facing an overwhelming force, that means that while you may not lose the battle, you certainly will not be losing any of your characters, which is kind of nice. But that's it for how to play the game and going over a little bit of the expansions. For now, it's time to jump right into the pros and cons as well as general conclusions. Whew. Well, folks, like I said, it's a big demo for a really big game, but now it's time to go into some general pros and cons. The first and the biggest pro for me is the theme on this game. I really enjoy studying and reading about not only just Japanese culture and history, but history, culture, mythology in general. And the Japanese culture is very, very rich, absolutely amazing, and the mythology is Well, in a way, it's kind of scary, to be honest, but it's also very, very interesting to learn and read about, and it's great to see that captured in a game like this. That said, it's not meant to be in a historical context. It's not meant to be like specific battles and specific people and that kind of thing. And so I think they do a very good job of striking that balance where it's there and you can feel the theme and you can see like the idea of the code of the Bushido with the honor and all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, if you don't necessarily like those things, you won't feel alienated, and it's not going to feel like a poor experience just because the theme is relatively strong. The next major pro for me is I like the improvements that Eric Lang made over Blood Rage. And obviously, I don't know if that was the intent of this game, but it's sort of like the side idea of what ended up happening, and it's something that I've heard from a lot of people, where Rising Sun has all of the elements of Blood Rage and more, and on top of that, the ones that it has that are the same were made even better in this particular game. Again, I really, really love the combat system with the blind betting and how that generally flows, and the strategic value that it adds. I love the Kami and how you can get those additional boons and resources. And it just, all of it works very, very seamlessly, which is something that I genuinely was not expecting, because there is so much going on with this game that it feels like not quite to the level of Twilight Imperium or even Eclipse, but something along those lines where you have a lot of these somewhat disparate mechanics coming together, and they came together in a very, very unique and interesting way. In particular, my personal favorite on this being the alliances. You guys know I love negotiation and alliances in games, and I think this game did it in an extremely fun and innovative way, with having the physical indicator of the alliance that you can then potentially even break and do something else. The next major pro for me I wanted to mention is really related to the first one, and that is the art. It's never something that I mentioned really extensively, but the art in this game is gorgeous. Like I said, I love studying Japanese culture and history, and I think they did a wonderful job of taking that artistic style and translating it into the board and onto the cards and all of that kind of thing. Not to mention seeing all the different kami and oni and these various monsters that are straight out of Japanese mythology. It's absolutely incredible, and I really, really love seeing that in a game like this. The next big pro for me is the replayability. Having all of the different clans that have their different abilities, having the different cards and the card styles that you can mix and match, not to mention having the different kame that you can bring in or bring out and all that kind of thing. It just makes for a game that feels a little bit different every single time, even if most of the things are the same. It's not exactly modular, but at the same time there's enough difference with the individual pieces that are already here that it can feel like a very unique and different experience the vast majority of times that you play it. Last but not least is kind of a pro and a con for me, and that's why it's last on the list, and that is the actual sculpting and the art in that sense. So the miniatures are beautiful. I will say that. I am happy to say it because it is true. I am not a miniature painter. I am not planning on ever painting these miniatures, but I think that they look great as they stand now. The problem is I don't like the whole Kickstarter aspect to this game, and it's something I've talked about a lot on my channel with some of the issues with this. And does it make me a hypocrite talking about this game and praising it so much? Maybe. But at the same time, it's extremely frustrating seeing games do this kind of stuff. There are a lot of aspects to this game that only came with the Kickstarter version, this particular one, namely the different components that I'm using. The vast majority of the components that I showed you today are ones that are specific for the Kickstarter version and are not in the retail version. For example, the indicators for the alliances, the fortresses are not plastic, they're cardboard in the regular retail game, and same thing for the Ronin and all this kind of stuff. And it's just really frustrating to see that. I don't like seeing the Kickstarter aspect rewarded so much. That said, the retail version does cost less than the original Kickstarter. However, the Kickstarter included some of the expansions, and the expansions are now, you know, like an additional $60, so in the end it costs more overall. So it's just like it's really, really annoying seeing this. And again, that's probably the biggest con for me, is just that that whole FOMO, the fear of missing out aspect that a lot of people are not going to have now, or that they're going to feel because they did miss out type of thing. One of the other major cons I wanted to mention is a little bit on the combat. I've seen the majority of analysis paralysis occurring on the combat rounds, and it can be really... It's not necessarily frustrating, but it can be a little bit annoying, because if you have multiple people at the table and only 2 of them are involved in a combat, then everybody else at the table is just kind of like do 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 do, and just sort of sitting there waiting to do whatever is next. And it can bog the game down a little bit, but it's one of those things where once you get used to it, it's really not too bad and it moves through fairly quickly. The other major con that I wanted to mention is kind of similar to the analysis paralysis one, and that is sort of the turn order thing. I know it's a random little thing to mention, but it's bugged me every time that I've played this, because it's like, okay, you're playing as the Koi clan, that means that you're going to go first, so you need to be in like one of the corners so that then we can go around relative to you type of thing. And it's just, I understand it for the purpose of balancing the game, but at the same time it's just kind of weird and it's difficult to get used to, even after you've played it a decent number of times, because you're always just sort of like, okay, what do I need to do? Where do I need to sit? How do we need to organize this? Or worst comes to worst, you're all already seated and comfortable and happy, and then you end up being like, okay, well, you go first, and then this person, and then me, and then this person, and you're just sort of jumping around the table, and it makes things really awkward and kind of weird. But that said, relatively minor gripes, all in all. The retail version aspect probably being the biggest problem that I have, and the lack of the Kickstarter thing, but to each their own, whatever you guys feel on it. As far as overall, the fact is, I really, really enjoy this game. I am not a person who generally likes things like Risk and these skirmish style games, not skirmish, but these territory control combat style games. It's not generally something I like, but Rising Sun really, really grabbed me in a very real and extremely, not really dramatic, but it was just really fun, and I honestly wasn't expecting to have as much fun as I did have. One of the great things about it is that after everybody gets used to it, not only does the game flow a lot more smoothly, but it's actually much faster than a lot of people expect, because the fact is that the individual mandate phases, the political mandates, don't really take very long. And so you just go through, you do that. The battles tend to take the most time, and even then, once you get used to it, it happens relatively quickly. So if you enjoy this style of game with the territory control and a little bit of light combat, this is definitely something to look at. If you enjoy more strategy and in-depth gameplay, resource management, all that kind of stuff, this is also a good game to look at, because neither one really outbalances the other. If you're a fan of miniatures, it's a great game to try. There's a lot of people who can potentially really like this game. If you're not into the idea of direct combat with your opponents, or if you're not about the potential for AP during the combat phase and having to do the blind bidding and stuff like that, if you just don't want to deal with big maps and miniatures all over the place and having to deal with a whole bunch of plastic bags to restore everything and all that kind of stuff, maybe not for you. But there's a lot of people, a lot of gamer types that can potentially really enjoy this game, in my opinion. I hope that you're at least willing to try it. But with that, as always, please let me know any and all thoughts and comments and questions in the comments below. You guys know I'd love to hear from you. But thank you very, very much for watching my demo and review for Rising Sun. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.